Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to our next episode of Masters of Product Live. Our topic for today is the impact of AI on end user computing. And to help us with that topic, we have Bharath Rangarajan. He's the CPO of Omnissa. He has over 20 years of product leadership experience spanning SaaS, cloud, and mobile technologies. As for me, I'm your host, Mustafa Kapadia. I help product organizations figure out how to use AI so they can be more productive and effective. You can learn more about me and my services at echo-point.com. Bharat, welcome to the show. I'm so glad we can have you.
Hey, Mustafa, great to be here. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. Trust me, with the week that I've had, I'm looking forward to it. Bharat, if you don't mind, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So I live in the Bay Area, quite like you do. I've been here about 25 years, happily married, my wife and two kids. And I also have three dogs, which keep me busy and help me with an active lifestyle, two huskies and a Malamute. So it's a good workout. And as you mentioned, I've been in enterprise software as a product guy for the last 25 years or so. Right now, working at Omnissa, heading up our products organization. So excited to be here.
Perfect. Thanks for being here. And by the way, for any of our listeners, please drop in a comment, tell us where you're from. And part of the show is actually live questions. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask Bharat or myself. The more questions you have, the more we can have more fun. Bharat, if it's okay, let's just start at the state of the industry, right? Tell me what's happening with AI, and tell me how it's impacting end user computing. Actually, if you don't mind, for our listeners out there, maybe you can define what end user computing is. Everybody has a different definition, and then let's talk about what the impact is of AI.
No, absolutely. No, yeah. The word end user computing is a funny term, right? Like you could clearly tell it was created by some technologist because it's an acronym, right? And I use this. This is a problem. I kind of always want to describe what I do to my kids. If you're able to do that, if you're able to do that successfully, then it's a good description, right? So the way let me start at that 10,000-foot level. End user computing is all about making sure employees of any company, of any ilk, of any kind of any nature, whether it's knowledge workers or frontline workers, are able to do their best job from anywhere. Right? It's at the highest level. So what does it mean? A little more detail is it's essentially the technology infrastructure a company, be it small or big, builds so that the digital experience and employee experiences as they come into the company and work till the point they leave the company is just perfect. So it starts all the way from onboarding, getting them the right device, getting them the right applications, and then also a bunch of behind the scenes functions like, hey, keeping my device up to date, this patching and all of that gnarly stuff that needs to happen. And also, of course, security, right? This day and age, as we bring in our personal devices to work, security. So it's a collection of a gamut of these technology infrastructure functions. And I will also add, in certain companies, I'm seeing this as a trend, especially the progressive ones, are also considering how they design the workspace. So essentially conference room design, workspace design, like collaboration rooms is all part of the end user computing. So real estate teams and IT teams are working closely to craft that overall experience, right? And this industry has seen quite a bit of change over the last several years. Yep.
And it's an important one too, because as an employee, when you come into an organization and when you get your device, that's your first experience with the IT department.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so that experience matters so much because that tells you how the onboarding is and so on and so forth. Just from the time of getting your devices, getting all your logins, and devices could be your laptop, your desktop, your phone, whatever it might be. And so for many people, end user computing is how IT first introduces themselves.
No, absolutely. I think to bring up an interesting point, I was in an advisory forum with one of my customers, a large telco company, very traditional 200-year company. And they were saying that every month or every week, I forget, they were onboarding 100 new employees and all millennials that time, right? And then they said 10% of them quit after the first month because they didn't like the technology infrastructure so they had to rethink. They had to rethink retention as part of that.
I mean, I 100% agree. I think end user computing is so important because it's also the device that you're going to do 90-95% of your work on, right?
Absolutely.
And so, I've had, when I joined Google, we had a choice between, do you want a Mac or do you want a Chromebook or do you want a Windows machine, right? And the
Yep.
whole reason for them to do that is because they want people to be happy on the machines that they work, as
Absolutely.
opposed to some companies in which, well, you're just going to get this IBM ThinkPad and move forward, right?
Yeah, it's kind of the classic 4T, like you can have it in any color as long as it's black, right?
As long as it's black.
Yeah,
Thank you for that. That actually
yeah,
helps.
yep,
So let's talk about the impact of AI, right? So you
mhm,
just talked about traditionally how end user computing works.
yeah.
How is AI impacting this industry?
I'll take that before I talk about AI, which of course is kind of top of the mind for every end user. I'll take a little bit of time also to explain the progression in the industry itself because
Yes, please.
it's contextual to understand the impact of AI. See, look, till about as going back to some of the threads we already pulled, till about 2010 or so, right? End user computing as a term or as a discipline didn't even exist because think about it. Everybody had a Windows laptop. That's it.
Yeah,
There was some
that was it.
for good or bad. Everybody had a Windows laptop, and that's it. There was no.
Yes. And it
And
was
then
all
the
locked down, and you can only do this. And remember, you had to VPN in if
yeah.
you were
Oh boy,
actually.
yeah. Oh, that was a fun exercise with VPN with your RSA secure token as a
Yes,
second
yes, I
factor.
remember that.
So anyway, it's pretty. I mean, from an IT perspective, it was probably perfect because very limited variance, right? Like you're not, you don't have like the different people doing
Yeah,
different things.
security is locked
But
down.
2010 fundamentally changed that, thanks to Mr. Steve Jobs and the iPhone. And I say 2010 because the first couple of versions of the iPhone were not enterprise ready, even to just do basic email. But by 2010, the iPhone 3 or 4, I
Yeah.
forget, it was a phenomenal device, right? Like compared to the
Yes.
Blackberries of the world. So people started bringing, that was what put, quite frankly, end user computing on the map. It was the iPhone moment because as people started bringing their iPhones to work, IT was like, wait a minute, now this is a new thing. This is not my standard Windows policies and stuff. This is a brand new thing. So that essentially put a lot of weight behind the EUC function. And the reason I mention is that brought a lot of progressive thinkers and others like anything else into this industry. So it's a big catalytic moment. The second one I would say was around SaaS. As SaaS became more
Yeah.
popular, then you had this notion of shadow IT. Like every marketing team started spinning up their own email campaigning applications and all of these things, right? So SaaS is the next big catalyst, and the third one, probably the biggest catalyst, and now it's still living, was COVID. Imagine when COVID came along, in a company that had like 5% remote work suddenly became
It's now
100%
95% remote. Yeah.
or 100 at that point it was 100%, and now they're coming
100%,
back to
yes.
somewhere. So that fundamentally changed everybody's mindset, which is like, okay, great, everyone's kitchen and their living room and their pub and their Wi-Fi, whether it's a DSL or a fiber, is the company's responsibility now.
Yeah.
People are calling in. So I think that also significantly changed. And the reason I bring that up is that opened people's IT's eyes, especially to all the kinds of things you needed to support. So you almost have to get to this location agnostic computing and also take care of security, take care of performance, so many things.
Yeah.
A choice, even employee onboarding. Typically, you would have people come into the office, and then you would sit in a conference room, and then the HR person would come, and then the IT person would come, and then the benefits person would come. You do that. That's all gone. You're sitting here doing everything online, right? Like there's no onboarding.
Yeah.
So now fast forward to today, right? When you think about AI, it's shaping it's shaping two things. One is what's happening on the end user as an employee. How is AI changing it? And there's a couple of things that's happening. First is there is, for lack of a better term, there is a copilot explosion, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody has a copilot. Every app you see, some of them are pretty good, no doubt. But then there's a bit of an explosion of copilots and also enterprise assistants. That's another. Hey, I'm going to IT, and everybody's building like, hey, I'll help you do everything. You don't have to worry about anything. Just ask this question, and then everything will get figured out, right? So this concept of copilots and then customized enterprise assistants to help the automation of quick flows, as we'd like to call it, for employees is becoming a big trend.
Yeah.
The second big area AI is impacting is around data analytics and search. So enterprise search has always sucked, right? It's never
Yes,
been
100%.
like Google search was great in consumer, but even Google failed in enterprise search, unfortunately.
Yeah, I
And
know
so, but
Google was trying to sell their search to enterprises and never caught on. So,
and so now people are taking, I think companies like Glean are taking a good shot at that.
mhm.
It's still early days, but you're seeing, I think that is the content explosion. AI can certainly help. And
Yes,
third, and I think more closely to where, I mean, end of the day, I'm servicing the end user, but through the lens of IT, right? So IT is also seeing, one of the interesting things I'm seeing in enterprise IT, especially in end user IT, is it's almost the opposite of what's happening in software development. Software development, everybody's afraid that AI is going to take their
yeah,
jobs away, and it's going to, because AI can do pretty decent coding, right?
yeah,
In enterprise IT, especially user IT, the challenge has been they've been perennially short-staffed. There's been a
yeah,
significant talent
always, yeah,
shortage, always short, right? So
always.
now, actually, we feel like AI is actually a boon, and we're seeing some three interesting use cases come up. One is use AI as a digital peer. So if I'm rolling out a new device strategy, can I use
Yeah,
them as a digital peer? Can I use them as a digital advisor or as a digital team where I can spin off new workers, right? And then get them going. So a lot of exciting stuff in terms of how do you deploy AI to understand data, but also now expand
yeah,
your virtual talent pool, right? So that's
yeah.
kind of all the things we're seeing.
Well, I mean, and that makes sense too. I mean, so I like the fact that you gave the history of where we are and or where EUC has been, and what you're seeing now, because I absolutely agree that I think having digital twins or digital peers can be a huge benefit to somebody who's just, either it's with the onboarding experience or either with there's troubleshooting or help desk or just, requesting a new device and whatever that might be. And I see how something like this can augment IT so they don't have to actually spend more, they don't have to hire more people.
Yep,
Um,
absolutely.
do you mind if you actually go the other way? So we're kind
Hmm.
of talking about the moment now. If
Hmm.
you had a crystal ball and you're thinking about what does it look like 5 to 10 years from now? Because remember, the devices that we know now are going to fundamentally change,
Yeah.
right? As it is, you can getting more and more wearables in which you can actually talk to them as opposed to
Yep.
having these phones. And so your devices are going to change. And who knows? And that's just the ones that I can think of. I'm sure you have others that you've already
Yeah.
contemplated. Um, but I know there's some startups now who are thinking about embedding devices into your own walls so that you don't actually have to look at your computer anymore. And I'm sure that's going to be eventually some companies' workflow eventually.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm curious where you see, and we can be as creative as we can, or if we want to be. Where do you see this happening, or where do you see this going in 5 to 10 years?
Absolutely. No, let's start with the dimension you talked about. So the first logical dimension or the first most obvious dimension of change is going to be devices, right? I
Yeah,
think even if you think about, I talked about like they're going from Windows to iPhone. Now, if you just look at any organization, you got Macs in the picture, you got Chromebooks in the picture, you got all kinds of thin
100%.
clients, and so just the basic
Yeah,
endpoint operating system has just become. I call it the second law of thermodynamics equivalent, the digital entropy, right? Like the digital entropy is only increasing every day,
yeah.
right? Like I think you
It's
have
just going to get messier and messier.
messy every day. But then if you look further out, I mean, now slowly we're also seeing the use of AR, VR headsets, VR headsets,
Yeah, that's
especially
true.
like
And Meta's
Oculus
pushing them hard, so
for
right?
training, right?
Yeah.
Like
And
I know a lot of. Mm.
if you don't mind, I see a big convergence with what's happening with AI, with headsets, and with robots,
Yep.
because you're going to have those things coming in too. And so I don't even know if robots fit into your definition of end user computing, but that's all converging.
Yeah, no, hold your thought on that. It's an interesting paradigm. But even before we get to robots, like
Yeah,
I'm
please.
seeing now maybe about 5x increase over the last 2 to 3 years in number of people or number of endpoints that are VR headsets, right? Like for
Hmm.
training, for immersion. I know a large consulting firm, they have a virtual floor where their entire onboarding, employee onboarding and welcome is all through
It's
where
all in
they
the
actually
VR.
see
Perfect.
all
Yeah.
through VR, right? So that's already happening. Other new devices we're going to see is like the other new gadget. I haven't used it, but I saw someone using it, and I was playing around with it. Was the Have you seen the limitless pendant? It's kind of
Yes.
it's a recording device. It's like you
Yeah,
wear it on your neck, and it records everything. Of
everything.
course, with permissions and all that good stuff. But then, end of the day, you can go ask it like, "Hey, summarize my day for me. What are the 5 things
Right.
Imagine if you bring that to the enterprise context. There's so much potential. That a lot of scary things as well. But
Lots of
but
security
there's
issues too.
like there's a lot of potential in those kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
And then we're also seeing augmented reality in things like frontline workers, people who are working
Mm.
in industry, like a refrigerator repairman goes from Samsung, wears this, and then they're looking at something, and then they have a call with somebody remotely sitting in the headquarters who's helping them. Oh, that seems like you have a blown fuse. I don't know. I'm not a
Yeah.
refrigerator repairman, so I'm just maybe using the wrong example.
Yeah.
But you need to fix this piece, and so they have like live guidance that's happening,
Yeah.
right? So the first thing we're seeing is just the device landscape
It's
with all these
changing.
things is going to significantly change, and therein comes in the usability paradigms and management paradigms.
Yes.
The next dimension I typically think of is applications, right? Like, of course, SaaS apps, native apps. There's this battle between native and SaaS apps, and the
Yeah.
world will end up in a hybrid place like anything else. You need native for some, you need browser for
You're
others,
gonna
right?
need both. Right.
Both, yeah. But the big change is some of even like Microsoft CEO Satya and others have said is the notion of, hey, what does agentic do to application development? And are the new 5 years from now, Salesforce might look totally different. I mean, they
100%.
themselves
Yeah.
are, it's like you may not be going to a Salesforce portal. It may be something that's encapsulated in a different form. So
Yeah.
as IT and as end user computing folks, you have to be prepared for how is the application landscape changing. So that's the second dimension. The third dimension is the interaction dimension, right? Like, which is how do you interact with digital technologies?
Yeah.
I mean, going back 25, 30 years, if we date ourselves, it's CLI. You used to write command prompts.
Yes.
Then the browser, then like you had rich clients, then you had browsers, then you
100%.
had search, now everything is voice based.
Yes.
Is that going to become gesture based? And I'm
Yeah.
waiting for a time. We're not, if you think about Neuralink and other things, it's going to become intent based. Like
Yeah,
I could
it's
be
only a
I
matter of time. I mean,
yeah,
these things are progressing at a much faster pace, right?
I mean, if somebody
Even
says
the
something like,
idea,
go ahead.
sorry, even the idea that just a few years ago, sorry, the idea that we do most of our stuff, our most interactions with technology days is with the browser.
Yeah.
And frankly speaking, what is a browser? A browser is nothing but a form. Now, there's a lot of good UX around it to make the form easy to fill. But if you go to Gmail or if you look at applying to a bank for a credit card or you're doing anything, it's a bunch of fields that you have to fill out.
Absolutely.
That's been our predominant interaction over the last 10 years. And now you get something like AI and you're going to have voice. And so now you have to rethink all of these things. You got to rethink the entire device ecosystem to say, you know what, maybe I don't need to open a browser now to apply for a credit
Yeah.
card, right?
Actually, our design team is very keen on looking at the interaction paradigm. So that's what they focus on a lot of times, which is like, hey, how is the interaction paradigm going to change? What is the interaction paradigm going? So that's the third dimension I was
Yeah,
talking about. And then the
absolutely.
last one you brought up was, which is an important one. You brought it up in the context of robots. It's like how is the workforce going to change? What
Yes.
is when you think about employees today? It started off with everybody's a full-time employee. You come in, you're badged in, and that's
Yeah.
the corpus of population. Then you had the contract workforce, right? Like, which is like, oh, I hire contractors and they're coming in, so I had to have different policies for them.
Yeah.
That's now slowly evolving into more of a gig worker economy, right? Like,
Yeah.
wherein I'm bringing in gig workers, and so some folks are like, some kids these days are telling, like, I'm just going to be a perennial gig worker. I don't want to have any affiliation or any loyalty to any
Yeah.
company, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the job market will change. But I was an interesting stat. I was hearing that 200 million gig workers in China, 200
Wow.
million gig workers in China that's shaping how the labor laws and other things have to be done, right? So
Yeah.
it's just
It's
insane.
massive.
And now you add to that, like we talked about digital twins and digital peers, and so you have a bunch of digital personas,
Yes.
and then you have the humanoid robots in some sense. And
Yeah.
I'm sure you're going
And
to have.
that's the
So
ultimate
if you think about,
manifestation
so
of
your
nature.
workforce is going to have like employees, contractors, gig workers, digital twins, and humanoid robots. And in 10 years from now,
Yeah.
it's going to be fun IT job to think about. I want to be a fly in the wall when you're setting policies and security considerations
Yeah.
for those
Well, it is not
evolving.
easy. I mean,
Yeah.
being, managing the end user computing piece in IT is not easy because you're always managing chaos, to your point, right?
Yep.
Sprawl is going to happen, and it's going to happen much faster. And
Absolutely.
it becomes harder and harder, right? With
Definitely.
that context in place, so tell me more about how are you and your organization responding? So a little bit more about Omnissa itself, what it does, right, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
then what are you doing to respond to these changes, right? What are you building? What are you thinking about building? So
Yeah, absolutely. So let me. Yeah, it's a good point to segue into just to double click into what Omnissa does today. Right? So Omnissa has some products that we have been selling for the last 10, 15, 20 years. So there are more in the traditional IT realm. Right. The first one is we build out what we call a digital workspace. So you come in to work, you log into Omnissa, and all your assets that you need, whether it's documents, whether it's, and we're not building a document repository, but we're pulling stuff in,
yeah,
all your applications. So the digital workspace, a consistent digital workspace that follows you from a phone to a laptop to a browser.
right.
So that's the first aspect of it. Behind the scenes, where we get paid for, what we monetize is actually a set of technologies. So first technology is around what we started off with is a virtual desktop. So if you don't want a physical Windows machine, you can actually run Windows in the cloud and stream it to you. So it's almost, think of it like, I call it the Netflix for Windows. So instead of running your DVD on prem, like who runs the DVD anymore? You just stream it, right? Like
exactly.
Why not do that for Windows? The second one is around endpoint management. So essentially all the policies and the app delivery to all of your endpoints. So we have a solution that manages the hygiene of every device that IT owns, right, or the employee owns that IT has provided. The third emerging area we're seeing is analytics-based product that collects telemetry from your endpoints and predicts failure. So for instance, if you're running a slow-running laptop, the traditional approach is you call your help desk guy and say like, hey, it's not working. And then they ask you to send logs, and it's like a 2 to 3 day affair, and you're stuck there. What if we bring in a Minority Report, like if you recall the movie with
yes,
Tom
I remember.
Cruise, yes, like what if we can predict? So you look at the data and say like, you know what, I think this laptop is going to see a higher rate of crashes in a couple of weeks if we let things now.
Yes.
Because and then you correlate and find out that's because of this NVIDIA driver and this app not working well. Let me fix that. Let me imagine if all of these things are happening behind the scenes, right? So that's the third set of technologies we build, right? So essentially, as we think about AI in this context, right? A few things. What we had designed. What is the design point we're going towards? So we want to take all these existing technologies and evolve them to the next generation.
Yes.
So some belief structures here are a lot of these things are going to go from traditional just back and forth assistive features to more agentic autonomous features. So our whole concept is of building an autonomous workspace, which is, we call it self-healing, self-configuring, and self-securing. By that, what I mean is that you go sit in your Tesla, it knows, sometimes it really knows where you need to go. And a self-driving car, it's self-configuring. A self-driving car is a classic example of a self-configuring entity, right?
Yes.
The second thing is self-healing, what I talked about, like where you can predict issues and almost do the minority report thing of fixing. And then the third dimension of this autonomous workspace is self-securing. And the best example thus far I've been able to come up with is the human body. If you think about right now, there are probably hundreds of thousands of viruses and bacteria that are being killed and nuked out without you even being aware of it, right? Like, can you build digital systems of that kind, right? That's the self-securing. So essentially, those are the kinds of things. And then from an IT perspective, the biggest bet we are making is around agentic workflows. We actually we had a customer conference last week, and we launched an agentic platform where we're going to take tailored workflows that are really hard, like vulnerability management, which I think if you're in the security industry, you know that is a huge pain, right? Like, and they are coming up, and now AI is also made it easy for people, the bad guys, to create these vulnerabilities or rather capitalize on existing vulnerabilities. So, but patching that, fixing that in a matter of minutes, not days, is an agentic workflow, for instance, that we're thinking about. So,
if you think
those
about
are the kind
AI,
of things.
100%. Yeah.
Yep.
We do actually have a comment. In fact, it's a comment from what you earlier said. I'm just going to put it on the screen. So thank you, the user. And they are agreeing with what you just said. It's like they're continuing seeing a trend where younger workers do not see company loyalty as a must-have, and goes back to your comment about the gig economy. I'm curious, and it'd be interesting for me it'd be an interesting number to know how many people in the U.S. consider themselves to be gig workers, right? Becoming more, at least in the Bay Area, it's becoming more and more prevalent. So
yeah, we can run a quick AI question now, and then by the time we finish talking, we can ask agentic AI in ChatGPT or others to run a report for us, right? Like give the gig worker stats.
100%. We can do a whole deep research. Thank you for the comment.
Thank you. No,
so do you mind if I actually double down on that? So it used to be, and you can tell me what the trends are now, that starting in 2000, most of end user computing was outsourced to offshore companies, right? I don't know what the state is now. Is it still that the case? And if that's the case, are we thinking about your products either? Who would you sell it to? Do you sell it directly to the IT department? Do you sell it to the outsourcer? Because there's a whole bunch of, can you actually augment the outsourcer and replace some of that work so you can actually put it into an agent? I'm curious how you're thinking about the market.
Yeah, I think you're right. When it was all that, like I said, the early 2000s or so, it was all Windows, etc. It became more of end user computing. Just became more of a help desk function for supporting those. And then but then, like I said, as mobility, as SaaS, things have been insourced. So now it's a strategic, especially post COVID, it's a strategic priority for the CIO.
Have to start pulling it back in house then.
The CIO, because for the important point that employee retention is tied to end user computing. So you can't have. So if you are preaching that, oh, employees are my most valuable resource, that's the biggest, then you put your money where your mouth is, right? Like, so you got to, and I think people are taking it seriously. So I think to that comment that even the LinkedIn user brought up, there is a sustained effort needed to change the mindset. How do you build employee loyalty? Because there is now proof that if you have loyal employees, your EBITDA margins, actually people have done correlations between EBITDA margins and loyalty and employees. So I think because of that, a lot of it is going. Of course, there is still tactical outsourcing. Right? Like, hey, somebody can run a managed help desk by the better, but the overall strategies is all in-house now.
Yeah, and so that makes sense too, because then the products that you're thinking about fit perfectly well in that ecosystem. Because then, if you're actually using agents to help with some of the key workflows, right, and you almost, the way I think about it is that the agents almost customize the experience of what matters to you.
Exactly.
Right? Because you can just ask the agent what you want and then you move forward with it, as opposed to trying to go through this process of going through these forms and so on and so forth. You can just go in and say, okay, here you go. Or even have a step-by-step experience with an agent.
Yeah, the amount of simplicity you can get through these agentic workflows is enormous, right? And simplicity, no matter what technology, which era we live in, the world always tries to get to a more simple place. Right? I think that's always the question in everybody's 100%. Mind, right?
I'm curious. I know you talked about your design team earlier. Do you see your design team, or do they envision eventually that you get rid of the whole? I know you talked about the platform for onboarding, and I apologize, I forget the name of it. But do you see your design team actually saying that maybe we don't even need that, and all we do need is some type of an agent as the front door? Or how are you guys thinking about that?
Yeah, I think therein comes in. It's a technology question, and then there is a policy question, and you have to. In a consumer company, the advantage you have is that you can pretty much design one thing and it'll largely work for, because consumers are largely homogenous in terms of the constraints they have, right? We can do it in certain high tech companies and with really progressive ideas. That kind of an agent-based onboarding. Hey, I just have a digital body, I can get that.
Yeah.
But then you go into think about onboarding a nurse or a clinician and all of that stuff,
That's
right?
Very different.
It's very different. So we have to have different strokes for different folks. But certainly the technology infrastructure can be, there's certainly a lot of opportunity for innovation there. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because you're absolutely right. The users at the other end are not always knowledge workers who work in an office, right? They could be anywhere.
Yep, absolutely.
That's a very different onboarding experience.
Absolutely.
So as you're thinking about this future, as you're thinking about building these products, what are some of the challenges that you're facing right now, right? Of building these products, and how are you planning to, or how are you overcoming those?
No, absolutely. So the first is the techno, because we are a consumer of AI tech, right? We are not building LLMs, we are not building
Yeah,
hardware. So we're a consumer of AI tech.
yeah.
And boy,
Smart choice. Don't ever build an LLM. Go.
so that industry though is changing, right? Like, okay, today they're like, oh, this is I go look at the Hugging Face leaderboard, who's there in the top and
Yeah,
everything. So first challenge we have to solving it well is building optionality in your stack, right?
yeah.
Like you can't be wedded to any particular thing. So you need that optionality in your tech stack. So that's a first principle design. And it's tough, right? Because how do you then it constrains you in certain other things. The second thing, which is probably the biggest mindset shift, is
Hmm.
if you think about how we thought about technology. Let's say I was building a transaction processing application on a database. You would see, hey, okay, this particular database or this particular data store can handle 1 million transactions a second. So let me back up and say, let me design my system for 90% of that load so that I have some
Yeah,
buffer capacity. AI is the exact opposite. Today, I had to go look at the LLM and say it can handle these many tokens and this is the capability, and you almost have to think, but in 6 months that's going to get doubled. So let me design for the future. So you don't want to be constrained by current limits, right? So I think it's
no,
almost like you have to think about where the world is going to be. So I think that is especially for the product managers in every
that's
company,
harder. Yeah,
that's a mindset shift of
yeah.
in terms of you got to, because by the time you deliver it, your assumptions about the
Things have
current
changed.
LLM have changed, right? Like, so how do you build things that are future proof, right? There's a big shift and big
Yeah,
things that we're addressing too, and then the whole concept of evals, right? Like, hey, how do you
yeah.
design things that are, and then the third one, which is probably an enterprise segment, true as an enterprise, is trust and governance, right? Like, so
Hmm.
I feel like all the great ideas we talked about, building the technology to support that is the easy bit. It's
Yeah,
getting people to trust. It's like, how many people are still using the full self-driving mode on a
yeah.
Tesla?
I
Or
agree.
uh,
Very
it's like,
few.
if you, so it's the trust, right? Not because the technology doesn't exist. It's the trust. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, with FSD, it's life or death, but
You
in
know,
enterprise, it's
I'm wondering. I agree with you, and in fact, I actually want to I want to double down on both on proofing, because large language models are moving so fast.
yep,
And granted, I will give you that things are slowing down a little bit, so you can actually make much more prediction as opposed to being in 2023, in which it was just like you never knew what could happen 6 months from now.
yep.
So I want to double down how you guys are thinking about future proofing, but more but the second part is, are you doing some things in which you can actually help design trust into your products itself,
No,
right? And because I've had some guests over and they've had some fascinating ideas about how they're trying to build trust into inherently a large language model that will give you a different answer
yeah.
depending on what side of the bed it got up that morning. So,
No, absolutely. I'll take the trust question first, right? So in terms of so trust and transparency to me are two sides of the same coin, right? Like
right,
if a lot of times when you're transparent, so we're doing all the basic things we do in terms of like nutrition labels and others. Like, hey, be
right,
super transparent. Hey, this is an AI powered feature. First of all, your default opt in, but you can opt out
yeah,
anytime you want to. So that's.
100%.
But then
Yeah,
it
that
also
control
tells
is
you,
important.
hey,
Yeah,
here is the data we collect. Here is the model we're using. Here is what it does and what it
yeah,
doesn't do, right? So that's certainly helping in terms. And then second, almost all the agentic flows we're doing, especially for security, are all human in the loop. So
perfect.
first you start with, hey, here's the
Yeah,
10-step process I'm thinking about. Step one, hit go. Then after step one, you'll get a Slack message saying step one is done, here are the results, do you want to go to step two? So putting the human in control is
yeah,
another definite way of building the trust for sure.
yeah. Yeah, I think that helps. And you know what? I think um, so many people skip the human in the loop and they try to figure out how I can do everything with either technology and AI, and usually never delivers a great solution, right?
Yep.
So I'm glad
In
you're doing that.
enterprise context, yeah, it's definitely it's almost like a must have at this point.
Yeah. How about the second one, or the previous one is, how are you or your PMs thinking about future proofing products?
No, I think it varies from case to case. I think when we do product reviews and other such things, it's almost like it's more of an art of the possible. First of all, we're making it super iterative. I think you've gone on the
you
days where you can go.
Yeah.
So the time cycles, or by shortening the time cycles, I think you're a little more lockstep with technology changes.
Yeah.
And then the second one is, we're also, like I said earlier, we're building optionality in the architecture itself. So, for instance, we have an LLM plugin and an LLM proxy and things like that allows us, like, okay, it doesn't matter. It could be OpenAI today, it could be Gemini tomorrow, it could be Llama day after, and then also it could be in certain cases, some people want to run everything locally. They want to run it on the endpoint. They want to run it. So now with a GPU-powered desktop or a GPU-powered virtual desktop, you can actually run some of the LLMs locally too. So we have to build that optionality. The other thing is that structuring good evals, right? Like, I think as we do evals and you have a good process of running these evals and having the right metrics around predictability and accuracy and all of that stuff is an important part of this.
Evals become so important as you're building LLM products or AI products, because it really helps you figure out what's good and what's not good.
Absolutely.
Bharath, we're almost out of time, so allow me to ask you the last question, and I'm going to go back to a personal question here.
Okay.
How are you personally using AI right now, or any hacks that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, it's I think, to me, AI has become pretty intertwined with the personal and professional life, right? Like, a lot of times, so few things I use. Right? I've always found that pictures, as the saying goes, pictures paint a thousand words, right? Like, so I'm using a lot more illustrations, even when I'm talking, like working with my kids and other things, like, and then even at work too, right? So using now the graphics tools have become so much. So that's certainly one. The second one is, like, the very practical example is, like, okay, I'm with my 13-year-old daughter. She's interested in this. I'm bored. We've got 1 hour on a Saturday afternoon. Suggest like 5 things for me to do, right?
Yeah.
So that's certainly
great.
becoming habit. And the other one at work, I found this last week. I found this. It's nothing rocket science or anything, but see, look, as since I'm the head of products, I get a lot of these inbounds from other tech companies with wanting to partner. Hey, we do this. It feels like Omnissa and us could be a great fit, right?
Yeah.
In the past, like, I'm curious by nature, and I don't want to feel like, oh, I don't want to leave any store. In the past, I would go spend some time looking at the company and like, oh, this is how it would work. Now I do 2 things. One is I go to an LLM and say, like, hey, company XYZ wants to partner with Omnissa. Give me your candid opinion on what are some areas of intersection, and it comes back. And the second thing I do now is I almost create like a digital competition. Let's say I did this on ChatGPT. I go to Gemini and say, like, by the way, your esteemed competitor told me that these are the things I should be doing with this company X, Y, and Z.
100%.
Can you identify any hallucinations or any better ideas? And boy, there is a lot of healthy competition and rivalry. Like, oh, that's and then we found some hallucinations, and actually one of my colleagues actually did this simple exercise. So I think, like, that's a great blueprint in terms of now 30 seconds. I'm able to say, oh, this is what the company does.
This is what
I get.
I love your last idea. In fact, if you don't mind, can I add on to it? So we actually have
go for it
right now, where we're actually helping them build digital competitors. So take their competition and create a digital twin of it, or a synthetic twin. A synthetic competitor. And the only reason to do that is because they are trying to figure out, if I do X, what is my competition going to do? And 100%. So designed around it, right? So if I drop my price, or if I introduce this new feature, how is it going to compare to this feature they already have? Are they going to build something new? Are they going to drop their price? And all of it it's like a war game type of mentality.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
so I love the idea that you're actually using it. In fact, I don't think so. I've heard any executive ever come to me and say they're using digital twins or digital competitors, but it's very powerful, right?
Absolutely.
And it can give you great insights.
Yeah.
We're almost at the end of the show, and we actually have a nice comment. Okay, Frank, thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoyed the discussion. Bharath, if it's okay with you, I would love to have you back and see how things are going in the journey. I guarantee you, a year from now, this landscape is going to be completely changed.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's one thing that's certain for sure. Everything else you can predict, but certainly the change is going to be a constant, as they say, right? So,
awesome. Well, thanks for being such a great guest. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Mustafa. Glad being here. Sure.
Bye for now.
Goodbye.